Hi, it's Paul Brooks, the SSAS Director of Wealth Builders here. First of all, congratulations. You're now the proud owner of a shiny new SSAS. That means the formal application process is complete and your SSAS is registered and live. And so now it's time to put fuel in the tank of your high-performance pension. In other words, you can now start the process of making new pension contributions from your company or personal funds if you wish, and also start the process of transferring existing pensions into the SSAS. Most people start their pensions with at least one existing pension transfer, and I'd like to spend a few minutes helping you understand the things you need to think about now to make that process as smooth as possible. Firstly, transferring your pensions can take a little time, so be prepared for this when thinking about deploying your funds. Depending on what the scheme is, how you are considering transferring your pension, and whether there are any particular tactical considerations behind when to transfer, all affect the length of time it can take. Transfer timescales also vary depending on the pension administrator too. In most cases, it's very unlikely to complete in less than 4 weeks, and we'd normally expect for a transfer to be completed between 8 weeks to 12 weeks. Certain pension providers are slower and more cumbersome than others, but this is always changing, and so unfortunately, we're not able to tell you exactly how long it will take. Remember though that our programme runs alongside these things, meaning that there is always something for you to do to make use of the downtime. If you've already acted on the emails that we've sent you so far during the HMRC downtime, then you'll almost certainly have signed documents allowing Empower Pensions to gather your transfer documents for most types of defined contribution pensions. That means personal pensions, stakeholder schemes, SIPs, and certain types of occupational or former employers schemes. However, there are circumstances where, even with your authority, Empower Pensions aren't able to get these documents for you, and if that's the case, they will let you know that you'll need to get these yourself, directly from your pension administrator. If you have a final salary pension, known more formally as a defined benefits pension, then depending on whether the value you have is live or not will determine what you should do next. Remember that these are very time sensitive. Valuations last for 90 days only, after which they expire, and often mean the need for a new valuation, normally at a cost. For these reasons, if you have final salary pensions, then now it would be important to get in touch with us as soon as possible so that your SSAS expert can help you coordinate the next steps for you, which might include starting or continuing our final salary programme, and engaging you formally with the specialist financial advisor that will provide the legally required advice that's needed before you can make your transfer. This leads me on to financial advice in general, which is what I want to cover next. At Wealth Builders, we're big advocates of taking the right advice from the right professionals, where it will add real value to you. And during your SSAS journey, there are several points at which speaking to a qualified professional will be important. Sometimes it's difficult to immediately see what value a professional wielding a bill for their time might bring, especially if you've had a poor experience with professionals in the past, or you feel like you understand the pros and cons of a decision already. Wealth Builders also place big emphasis on the importance of education and support during your work with us, and that includes helping you understand what the benefits of seeking professional advice might be. So, I wanted to spend just a few minutes helping you understand why taking financial or tax advice can really add value and help when making an important and irrevocable decision to transfer your pension or your cash to a SSAS, no matter what they are. I'll start with pension transfers, and so financial advice. If you've come this far, then you'll have already spent time with your SSAS expert, during which time you will have discussed your existing pensions. When you sign our service agreement to get started, there is a short video highlighting the importance of advice, and your SSAS expert will almost certainly have tried to make you aware of any potential complexity with your current pensions and will have spoken to you about financial advice in the past. In fact, even before you formally engage with us, we will have helped you to broadly understand whether there might be challenges with any pensions you wanted to transfer, and if there might be the requirement or the benefit to taking regulated financial advice from an independent financial advisor or IFA. You now have a decision to make about any pensions that don't require you to take advice legally, namely pensions which have money in a pot or money in the markets, known as defined contribution or DC schemes, or sometimes money purchase schemes. The important question here is whether you know enough about the existing pensions you have, the benefits that may or may not be visible and clear, what those benefits might be, and the pros and cons of transferring the pensions. Remember that transferring your pensions is an irrevocable and once-in-a-lifetime decision. If you do it without understanding all of the facts, you can't go back, and you could lose benefits that might well be valuable to you. Unfortunately, wealth builders can't outline all of the different types of pension available here, nor whether they are more or less likely to include any hidden features. That's the job of a qualified financial advisor, and to avoid any doubt, neither wealth builders or any of its team are regulated financial advisors. But as always, we can help raise awareness, in this case of the type of potential benefits that pensions can have, and especially those that aren't always obvious, to highlight why advice can be a big benefit. Some pensions are simple. With some exceptions, most money in the markets pensions, which you started or joined after the 5th of April 2006, known as A-Day, all follow the current pension rules on taking benefits, and so excluding some notable exceptions, you may not have any hidden complex features in these. That might relate to stakeholder pensions, personal pensions, SIPs, and new auto-enrolment pensions. In broad terms, if these pensions were joined or started post the 6th of April 2006 and don't provide any form of guaranteed pension income, it won't usually have any hidden features. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't seek the advice and guidance of a qualified financial advisor, however, because there are exceptions. One example is a form of contractual benefit that isn't available today in a new pension, or even with the same provider once your pension is moved, known as with-profits funds. Often, with-profits pensions and funds carry guaranteed rates of bonus and growth, and guarantees that protect the value of your pension from falling, and these aren't clearly outlined to you by pension providers every time they send a statement. These could well be valuable to you, had you been clear on them. Pension schemes you joined or created before the 5th of April 2006 have a bigger likelihood of there being hidden legislative features, which can include things such as guaranteed benefits underpinning your pension income, higher than usual tax-free cash sums, and even early retirement ages. Collectively, these things are known as safeguarded rights. In particular, former employers' pensions joined before April 2006 have a much higher chance of including one or more of these benefits, which may have serious value to you. Older personal pensions are also much more likely to have contractual benefits, such as with-profits bonuses and guarantees, and another important and potentially valuable benefit called guaranteed annuity rates, or GARS for short. GARS were particularly prevalent in the 1980s, 90s, and even early 2000s. They are basically a contractually guaranteed income at a stated retirement age if you purchase an annuity with that pension provider. Whether you feel annuities are bad value for money or not, these rates were often very generous. Compared to today, where an annuity rate rarely exceeds 4 to 5% per annum, these can be incredibly attractive, and so you must understand the pros and cons before making a decision to transfer schemes with these benefits. There is also a very niche type of scheme called a Section 32 buyout bond, which can uniquely inherit old workplace pensions and any particular guarantees or benefits that it might have offered. So, even if the scheme looks like a personal pension with simplicity, if it contains any of these words, Section 32, buyout bond, buyout pension, or S32, then it's quite likely to contain something more complex. As a rule of thumb, the older the pension scheme, the more potential for these features to apply. Schemes you joined before 1997 have the highest chance of some legislative features like safeguarded rights or contractual features like GARS applying. Again, to be clear, Wealth Builders is in no way providing financial advice here, just simply raising awareness and providing education on some important features that certain pensions can have, and strongly guiding you to seek financial advice to be clear on the pensions and benefits you have and the impact of transferring them. Aside from the potential for hidden features and benefits you need to understand before you make any transfers, you might also need to make a decision about how to transfer your pensions. That's next. Defined contribution or money in a pot pensions can be transferred in one of two ways, depending on the type of pension you have and the options that your current provider allows. Usually, this is determined by the age of the pension. The newer the scheme, the more transfer options it might allow. The first way to transfer is also the simplest, a cash transfer. That means that once the pension transfer has been signed off by the provider, having been through the provider's due diligence process, then all of the holdings you have will need to be sold and a cash transfer is made to the SSAS bank account. The second is more complex but may also be beneficial in certain circumstances, and it's called an in-specie transfer. Rather than selling the holdings you have, an in-specie transfer involves transferring the assets you hold in the existing pension, essentially re-registering from the current pension provider to the SSAS. To do this, three things must be checked. Will your current pension provider allow in-specie transfer? Can the SSAS accept the assets you hold? And finally, will the provider of the investment accept this? Not all assets can be transferred in specie. For example, taking on an asset which has breached pension rules might incur a tax penalty if the SSAS took it on, and so it might be refused to avoid that penalty occurring to the SSAS. Not all asset providers allow in specie transfers either. Most types of assets can be transferred, including loans and loan notes, funds, individual shares, commercial property and land. You need to bear in mind that there can be legal costs to re-register certain assets, such as property, and your pension provider might also charge fees or additional fees to transfer assets in specie. It can be much more complex than a cash transfer, and for that reason, and particularly if you have multiple assets, such as a portfolio of funds or shares to transfer, taking advice from an IFA is almost certain to save you time, money and potentially a big headache. To transfer funds and shares in specie, you need to have a SSAS-friendly share broking account or fund supermarket set up within your SSAS. There are many to choose from, and again, an IFA can help you navigate around these to find the most suitable, including one which can accept the funds or shares you currently have. Usually, the only type of pensions that can accommodate in-specie transfers are SIPPs and the more modern personal pensions. Occupational pensions, stakeholder plans, and older personal pensions are very unlikely to allow in-specie transfers. So, as you can see, there are quite a few considerations when it comes to transferring your existing pensions, and as this is an irrevocable decision, we firmly believe that if you aren't clear on your current benefits, your options, or whether to and how to transfer in specie or cash, then we'd always strongly suggest you take the advice of a professional financial advisor. Wealth Builders can connect you to an IFA who can help you with all of the points we've discussed. Please contact your SSAS expert or the support team if you'd like a connection or want to talk more about advice. If you've made the decision that you don't require financial advice before proceeding, or if you've already taken advice at this stage, then it's at this point that you can start the transfer process. The SSAS administrator, Empowered Pensions, will either have gathered the transfer documents in readiness or asked you to connect with your pension provider if they aren't able to get these on your behalf. There are broadly 4 stages to the transfer process. First, the initial paperwork being completed and sent to the provider. Then, a period of due diligence whilst they carry out their checks. And then, either the disinvestment of your funds or the start of a re-registration process of assets you want to transfer in specie to the SSAS, followed finally by the old scheme being closed once the transfer completes. Once signed by you and returned to Empowered Pensions for them to sign, the initial transfer documents will be sent to your pension providers, and this starts the formal transfer process. We'll be in touch shortly after you've completed at least your first set of transfer documents to provide you with more detailed information on the next steps and what to expect. Again, if you have final salary schemes, then you should reconnect with your SSAS expert to discuss the timing of new valuations and connecting you up with the IFA to complete the transfer advice. A quick reminder on transfer timescales. For obvious reasons, most pension providers don't put huge resources into teams that transfer money outside of their management. These teams are therefore often backlogged, and they also have a legal requirement to carry out due diligence on the pension scheme receiving the transfer, as well as the parties connected to it. This due diligence and the overall transfer process can take many weeks to complete, and if the pension scheme's process involves them writing to HMRC, then overall timescales will increase, as this can often take several weeks for a response. We'll explain in more detail slightly later what to expect in the process, and of course the SSAS administrator will carefully navigate communication with your pension schemes. However, communication from your existing schemes can be very limited and infrequent. They will often send supplementary questionnaires during the process, sometimes several weeks after your initial documents were sent, and these often ask questions that you might have already covered or feel are irrelevant. Please do bear with this, as they are part of the due diligence requirements of the pension schemes and are important to ensure your safety from scams and fraudsters. Our next video instalment will prepare you in detail for what to expect so that you can diligently and accurately answer all questions raised, and in all cases you should notify your SSAS expert when you receive these questionnaires. Do be prepared for the fact that the average transfer can usually take anything from 6 to 12 weeks, and although some are shorter than this, some may also take longer. Finally, I'd like to touch on making new pension contributions to your SSAS. Those of you wishing to make regular pension contributions can do so now, because the SSAS is approved and the bank account is ready to start accepting these contributions. Many of you will be considering making a pension contribution of some kind, and there are quite a few different options available, as you'll probably recall. You can make regular contributions or lump sums. Perhaps both apply. There is also the potential to contribute assets instead of cash. This is called an in specie contribution. Don't get this confused with the in specie transfer I mentioned earlier. An in specie contribution means taking something that you or your business owns now and contributing this thing instead of cash. The fantastic thing about this is that it still gets the same tax relief as a cash contribution, but means that you don't have to part with the cash you have to boost your SSAS. However, like in specie transfers, it's much more complex, and there are things that you must consider, as the contribution of assets is treated as a disposal for capital gains purposes, and so can have other tax consequences that you need to take into account before committing to the transaction. You also need to decide where these contributions, whether cash or in specie, will be paid from, either your personal earnings or from the business as an employer contribution. Again, you might be considering both. It's at this stage where we'd strongly suggest that you consider whether the advice of a tax specialist or financial advisor, or in some cases both, would be beneficial to you. Once you've decided that you'd like to make them, there are many things to consider when making a contribution, perhaps more than meet the eye, especially in specie contributions. Firstly, will the amount you want to contribute need to be assessed against something called the annual allowance? Secondly, if you're thinking of making a large contribution, you might need to consider something called carry-forward allowance. Finally, those of you with high levels of income from all sources, like property, savings, and earned income, may need to be mindful of something called tapering of the annual allowance. Lots of pension jargon there, but in simple terms, your great intention can be undone by misguided execution if you don't understand the parameters and circumstances that apply to your current financial position. Wealth builders are not tax experts, and so are not providing you with tax advice here, but raising awareness of the considerations. We strongly guide you to take advice from a suitably qualified tax expert, financial advisor, and in some cases both, to ensure you make contributions in the correct way. As always, Wealth Builders can provide a connection to a suitable tax expert and IFA to help you navigate this. Just reach out to your SSAS expert for help. If, however, you've decided to proceed without any advice or have already taken advice, then you can contact Empowered Pensions and let them know of your intention to make a contribution. I hope this short but important update and guide helps with the next big step of fueling the SSAS. As a quick summary, any defined contribution pensions like SIPs, former employers' pensions or personal pensions can now proceed. It's at this point that you should be considering the importance of financial advice before transferring the scheme. Please let us know if you'd like to speak to your SSAS expert or for us to arrange a connection to an IFA to help you. Otherwise, your pension transfers can start, and you should liaise with the SSAS administrator Empowered Pensions to arrange this. If you have a final salary pension, then please connect with us as soon as you can so that we can guide you through the next steps of the final salary programme, or arrange with you to start this programme, which culminates in the formal connection to a specialist pension transfer financial advisor who will provide the legally required advice. Remember that final salary pension valuations have a shelf life of just 90 days before they expire, so if you already have your valuation, please do send it to us as soon as you can. Finally, if you're thinking about making pension contributions, then you're able to do so from this point. Again, it would be important to consider the size, type, and nature of the contribution you're looking to make and decide whether advice from a tax or financial expert would be valuable. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions at all, and once again, congratulations on being a SSAS owner.